which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
I forgot to hit the record button.
All right, we have no citizens in our audience. So we'll skip the citizen comment period. And we'll review and approve the minutes from December 12th, which is item number 3 in your packet.
Seems like an eternity.
To make it real simple, I move we approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Approval and second. You got that? All those in favor?
Who's second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And now we have the Office 365 migration project, which is also an item in your packet, item 4.
Okay, this is more of a discussion and notification. There is no resolution that's needed for it. We had a project with to do a quick onboard of Office 365. The point of the entire project is it seemed at the onset of it is to be a fairly straightforward migration. We had the project broken down into 2 phases. Phase 1 would be to build out the Office 365 tenant and then get authentication working with YubiKeys as our 2FA choice. And then phase 2 of the project would be to move the data off of our Microsoft Exchange server, which is an Exchange 2010 server, which has its own issues, and then move that then up to the Office 365 cloud. As we'll get into, the 2 main reasons for the fast tracking of it is, 1, this was basically signed on September 18th, and we had the major security hack on August 15th on it. And the cybersecurity insurance company basically said, you have 90 days, and they have now extended it. But we're still going to have to sweet talk them into it. You have 90 days to put 2FA in place for your organization, and you have got to get off of that local Exchange 2010 server, or we will not renew your security policy, which we get through the League of Municipality, which is Tokyo Marine. Got it. Okay, understand it. One of the main reasons why we had the security incident is they were able to go into the VPN without having to do 2FA, and that's how they got in, because it originally was an SSL VPN and easy to break forward. So yes, we knew we immediately had to turn around and implement 2FA and get this going. Well, we've been looking at this project for a while. We have some vendors, Heartland being one, Cornerstone being another. We had a third. And then iBailey we were looking at, and they had the lowest price, but they also had a Microsoft, former Microsoft employee who used to do the onboarding of this, Brian Gullickson, and this looked like it was going to be a much easier and quicker point of migration. Their SAO was tighter than the other competitors for it, so it's like, let's just turn around and do this now because we know we have to turn around and do the migration of it and get onboarded as quickly as possible. We also bypassed the traditional legal review because we said we don't have 8 to 10 weeks for this to sit in Jesse's office like it normally does of signing any contract that has to go to a former boilerplate on it. Plus we were kind of questionable, will Microsoft with the MSA, even though we didn't really sign anything with Microsoft, agree to this standard city boilerplate contract? Most likely not. Let's just turn around and move forward with it. So those, and we did not take it through the Technology Commission, which probably was another big mistake with the fast onboarding of this. So those are the basic tenets of what the project actually was. I had to put this project on permanent ice and cancel our contract with iBailey. I did that. We stopped all work on the 31st of January of this year, and they got their official notice, I believe it was on the 7th or the 11th of February for it. It was clear that the project was going nowhere. We were spinning our wheels. It was questionable if there was architecture involved, and I wasn't going to do what you see happens in a lot of departments here in government, especially in engineering on roads and trails, where they'll just let things go on and on and on and on and throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at a project, and then continue on throwing more money and more money and more money, and it never produces the results. First thing they teach you in project management class is if you think that this project has no chance of meeting its deliverables, and if you think you definitely have a major scope issue, stop the project, put it on ice, bring it back to the design phase, re-look at it, and then reboot your project from scratch instead of continuing to throw resources at something that there may be a very low level of success on it. And that's what I actually did. And that's not done very often, especially in government at this point. So I made an executive decision that I wasn't seeing the results. I questioned if what we were doing was effective. I did not think we had the right talent on board with the consulting firm to help us out. So the project was officially canceled. And now we're going to be rebooting it with a completely and totally different firm if we cannot turn around and resolve some of the issues ourselves for it. So that's the nutshell of what we're looking at here. As I said, iBailey was the current contracted vendor to set up and configure a Microsoft Office 365 G3. Now note that we did do a G3 instead of an E3 tenant, thinking at the onset, we're government, it'll be more secure. This is a good thing, trying to put it on a more secure platform that only government tenants may be there. Might have screwed ourselves a little bit on that decision. So we set up with a G3 tenant and a hybrid model and established 2FA token authentication via Yubico security key. So that's the goal of the project. On February 10th, 2025, iBailey was issued a terminate with cause order after 4 months of work did not accomplish all the project deliverables outlined in the statement of work. With that stop order, it would prevent any ordering any additional billable hours. It would not prevent, because it's an annual contract, the billing of the monthly Office 365 licenses, and the termination order and responses I also included in the handouts as well, if you wanted to actually see that. I am listing this now as a project failure, with a termination order formally considering, is now being considered the project to have failed. Phase 2 of the project, which was supposed to be the Exchange migration, we never got a SAL for that, so because we didn't get past Phase 1, we aren't going to turn around and go to Phase 2, and the big problem is authentication with 2FA is not functional and it's extremely error-prone. With that, we know we have to migrate off of Exchange 2010. We need to migrate the legacy and unsupported local Exchange server. This has been in planning for some time. We did have a capital budget for 2024 of $129,692 was allocated for the creation of Microsoft Office 365 tenant and porting all local Microsoft email accounts to the cloud. Funding was to include implementation costs, Microsoft licenses costs, 2FA tokens, and the funding was based on several proposals that we actually had at the time. The project was envisioned, as I said, to be in 2 phases. Phase 1, the setup of the Microsoft tenant and establish hybrid AD synchronization to the Office 365 cloud. 2FA hardware tokens would be linked to the user accounts. Hardware tokens were needed to be used because the requirements by the PD and the FD that smartphones or larger equipment could not be carried around in order to provide authentication. Now, I was also told that's a union requirement. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but this has been a request from both the fire chief and the police chief. They don't want people carrying their own cell phones around, personal cell phones, to do 2FA authentication, or do they want to be liable in case the phone gets damaged? So that would mean if we did not do hardware tokens, we would have to buy a cell phone for every person who's a union employee in the city. That would get expensive extremely quick. So the choice was instead to go with 2FA tokens, and we chose YubiKey because it met the CJIS requirements the most. The project was 2 phases. Phase 2 would be once authentication was established and confirmed to be stable, Microsoft Exchange accounts would be ported over to Office 365. The desire to do this was to do this in one stage. We had alternate proposals. One would be from Heartland Business Systems, where they wanted us to go from Exchange 2010 on-prem to Exchange 2013. Once you're on 2013, they said we then had to turn around and go over to 2016 and 19, and then we could port. I've been told by iBailey, who's told me lots of things that have been wrong as far as we could do this in one fell swoop, that there isn't a direct migration path from 2010 all the way up over to the cloud. Other vendors said you couldn't do that. Bailey said you could. I was just told this afternoon from PDS, which is now Convergent IT, no, you can't do that. You would have to use some third-party tool in order to turn around and do that migration path. Which one's right? I'm being told now multiple different things from multiple different parties. So that's part of the post-mortem analysis that we're going to have to figure out. We were going to do email access only to the cloud. Mobile devices would have to be reconfigured, so anyone's cell phone, instead of talking to the local Exchange server, would have to talk to the cloud. That means Outlook Web Access would have to be available in the cloud. Our old Exchange server, of which we do have a NAT rule in order to get to it. Right now, only Mimecast can talk to it. But there is a hole in the firewall for it, and that will then go away. The Exchange server goes away. The NAT rule then goes away. And then we would also have to figure out what the heck we're doing with email archiving and backups. With email archiving, knowing you're in government, you have to keep things forever. You can't delete anything. So our phase 1 project with deliverables, as listed in the statement of work, was to configure a new Microsoft Office 365 government tenant to Microsoft best practices for productivity and security, including integration with Mimecast, enable Entra Connect to sync with our Active Directory objects, procure the recommended licensings, which would be Office 365 GP plus Enterprise Mobility plus Security G3, because we needed that for YubiKey. You need to be enrolled with Microsoft Intune in order to use the YubiKeys. Deploy a subset of licensing to some test users. Hybrid join the devices to Entra ID and register the devices with Microsoft Intune. Configure and deploy the Windows Hello business policy with Yubico 5 NFC security keys as a form of multi-factor authentication for employees. Enable single sign-on applications using Entra ID and administer end-user training for Microsoft Office 365. Some of the mistakes that an internal post-mortem, which I did, immediately pointed out. We did fast-track the project. Why? Because after 8/15, we had a security incident with a VPN access being granted without 2FA. Cybersecurity insurance providers stipulated that both 2FA and cloud-based exchange needed to be implemented prior to the end of the year. They have now given us an extension till March on that, which that's not going to happen. Bailey was internally selected by the implementation vendor due to the apparent knowledge and experience with onboarding engineers and a simpler migration path for Microsoft Exchange. The vendor was most likely not appropriately vetted by other government agencies on that. Bailey did not perform a pre-cloud migration and infrastructure analysis prior to launching the project. Robert Half Technology identified that when I started telling him our tale of woes, and it's like very common for that to actually happen. They should have done it. Migration and infrastructure analysis would have identified the following prerequisites. Domain names, UPNs, our difference between our internal and external domain. This used to be a good practice at one point in time, of keeping your internal domain separate as different from your external domain, but the world has changed where now a lot of people have it the same. So the internal domain we have is ci.franklin.wi.us. The external domain name is franklinwi.gov. Now, I'm going to jump a little ahead. Brian Sajak, the attorney that works in the same law firm as Jesse, he's also the city attorney for the city of Mequon. So I did reach out to the city of Mequon because he said they have the same thing. They have a disjoint namespace just like you do. This can be done. And in my conversation with Mequon, they said, well, what they told you isn't quite true. When we started, we were ci.mequon.wi.us when we onboarded many years ago, and our external domain name at that time was ci.mequon.wi.us. But he said, we've now turned around and changed our email to mequon.gov, and we added that as another domain name. But he said our original onboarding, when everything was set up, both the internal and external domain name are the same, and that still works, and we still have that registered. Where that they have a disjointed domain name, but they onboarded under a different set of circumstances than what we actually did for it.
But our internal domain is the CI Franklin WI US.
Right, and then
But
that
we're
BIOS name for that is Franklin NT.
Yep, and then what we're known externally is franklinwi.gov, because that's what the email addresses are for.
That is correct.
Yeah, but you should be able to operate like that. There's nothing.
Now, Adrian
Well,
at Microsoft at the call said you can, but we had to, with synchronization, put in a transform file for it.
So yeah, that's the issue. So right, it doesn't like it when it's that way. So you have to put in that transform file, and you also have to test the other applications to make sure it's resolving correctly. So it's strongly, strongly, strongly recommended that it is the same
Yes.
by Microsoft officially.
So if I had 3 domains, I can't run 3 domains off the same one.
You can.
But then I have that.
You have to then manually set up and test every single one of those different things.
Or
to
you
make sure
do
nothing
federation.
breaks, and every single time Microsoft changes something, nothing breaks. So you can,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of work.
Now, you
Make sure
can
it's-
add a secondary UPN suffix, which was also something they recommended, that you go into Active Directory Domains and Trust, you add another UPN suffix to it, but then you have to go to everybody's Active Directory account and then change their UPN login to franklinwi.gov. That then brings up the question, which no one could answer. What's that going to do with my Active Directory integrated applications? One of the big ones we have is BSNA. That's our finance application, and that's also our land and parcel management application, which is essential to the city of Franklin. Is that going to screw anything up in logons with BSNA if suddenly I started changing that? And what's that going to do with our extremely legacy Exchange 2010, where if I suddenly turn around and change that on Exchange 2010? Again, they couldn't tell me. So the thought process at the time was don't go down that route of adding the secondary UPN. Instead, the safe thing to do would just be to keep it the way it is and then just turn around and do the transform file for Active Directory synchronization.
And the transform is on franklinwi.gov because it's actually no.
The transform is actually on the connector that sends all of the data.
But you're
There's a
transforming franklinwi.gov.
Yeah, there's a connector that
The native
gets all the Active Directory database, and it's the directory database, and it sends it up to Entra, and then it changes in the connector of anything it sees as CI franklinwi.us. It changes that to franklinwi.gov, and that's what's being stored actually in Entra. But that's only the 80 synchronization process. So
all your authentication is off of CI franklinwi.us. Franklinwi.gov is just for email, correct?
no.
What else is authenticating?
Anything that you would use in Microsoft Office 365. So
No,
Microsoft
back-
Intune would do it. So any Office 365 app.
Back up.
Mhm.
If right now, without Entra, is everything authenticating with CI franklinwi.us?
Yes, it's authenticating to the domain controller.
So why wasn't that carried forward? Because the other one is just kind of an external alias, the way to think about it. The CI franklinwi.us is how everything is configured, right? On-prem? That's how it
On-prem, everything is configured to see it. Now, I would either if I needed to turn around and use franklinwi.gov internally, and that's what people authenticate to, I have two choices. I migrate the domain to a brand new domain, Enforced, with franklinwi.gov. That's option one. Option number two would be to add in a secondary UPN prefix, but you don't know how the internal applications are
Right.
going to turn around and handle you suddenly changing the prefix. Is it comes down to how did the programmer write the program? Did they write the program to turn around and tie that username by the SID? Of which case it would have no problems. But if it's not to the SID, if they're tying the actual ID, the actual UPN name, and that's how they're storing it in the application, then if you suddenly change the UPN, that's going to change the last end. Instead of J. Metelsky at CIFranklinWI.us, if I suddenly change it to J. Metelsky at FranklinWI.gov, am I going to have problems with BSNA?
Right, that's where I was saying is if everything just worked out the CI franklinwi.us for everything, right? If franklinwi.gov is just an alias on your email.
It is what email is. That is
Right.
the domain name that we use for email.
Correct. And so you just make it as that. Isn't Otherwise, what you've done is you've taken all external authentication and made it all franklinwi.gov, and all internal is CI, and that's where you start running all kinds of problems.
I could take, even though CI FranklinWI.us, the whole US domain is legacy and is being issued.
Yeah.
So I could, in order to do that, if I did not want to change my internal domain, and I wanted my internal and my external domains to be the same, I would have to change everyone's email address to be ci@franklin.wi.us.
You have more than one domain on somebody's email address.
You can, but that's just an alias on it. I mean,
Correct.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, if I can suggest we move off this
Yeah.
point, because you guys can.
yeah, it's just
Yeah,
my
debate this.
my only concern on this is that it starts taking. My only concern is I've read through this before, and I guess where I'm going with this is how are we getting to these decisions? I guess is where the bigger picture is, because I feel like that's the crux of all of this is.
I think the bigger picture is the third bullet on the previous slide, that the proper analysis was done up front.
Right. This was not known when we signed the statement of work.
And how do
This
we
was
fix that going
discovered
forward?
when we go through the details. This was discovered after we set up the tenant. We tried to turn around and get AD synchronization working, and then suddenly it blew up. And then I reached out to Max, who then turned around and got me with the Microsoft engineer and said, you can do this with a transform file.
And this is the topic that I want to have that follow-up call with
Yep.
Adrian. He's a senior level engineer. He's good.
I'm good.
So this is the identity thing is the topic I want you guys to talk
Yeah,
about. Adrian.
all this needs to be really fleshed out because it wasn't fleshed out at the beginning of the project, and this should not have even launched without knowing the intimate details of this.
So going back to the other question, which was on the previous slide, where we didn't do the pre-cloud migration,
Right.
Is that something that we have to have a third party do? Is that something Microsoft can run? Is that something that we can run? Like,
For the
I'm not an
identity
expert in
or for
cloud.
the actual 365 stuff, the mailboxes.
both?
The identity stuff there's that tool that we called ID Fix.
Mhm.
Is that the name of it? That's the recommended tool. It's kind of a self-service one.
Okay.
And having the call with Adrian, I would say, would be the good first step. But then
Okay.
there's a separate program called the Microsoft Fast Track Migration Program. And if you have over 150 licenses, you qualify for free remote support from Microsoft to plan out your actual migration.
Okay.
And you can migrate from 2010. I was looking through the documentation. You can migrate from 2010, and I worked with many customers who you had to get from 2007 to 10 because 10 had the right connectors to O365.
Okay.
Granted, that was 7-8 years ago. I did my last one of those, so things might have changed a little bit, but documentation still looks like it works.
I mean, it seems like a very top level process breakdown.
Yeah.
We shouldn't even be having this technical
Right.
discussion right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know we can get in the weeds real quick on this.
It seems like to the alderman's point, and everyone else has chimed in. Having that analysis done up front to say, here's what we have, here's what we need to do. These are the pieces and parts we're going to have to buy, or the time we're going to have to spend. Can we get it done in 90 days? No, we can't do that. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we went down with his Eide Bailey. Never heard of, but went down with Eide Bailey, and they said, "Oh, we can do that. We can do that. We can do that." We can go from 2010 to O365, and you're hearing other things.
That's why I thought it was wise to put the project on ice and then get the real answers.
Yeah, I think we picked the wrong people, and
Oh,
we
that's
didn't
obvious.
we didn't go in with a plan. We went in with, we're just gonna plow through it,
And it
may-
didn't
maybe
seem
having
that complicated.
maybe having
at
a
the front.
2-week engagement that says, here, let's lay out the plan, do the analysis on the infrastructure, let's figure out what do we need, step. And these are, here's a gotcha, here's a gotcha, here's a gotcha. Okay, let's figure those out. And then do the implementation might have been a better way to.
Yes.
You went in with a task plan, not a risk analysis.
And that's where I say we have the
We've
call.
seen this happen.
We have the call with Adrian to talk about identity. You
Mm-hmm.
file that fast track request tomorrow morning, with that, because you have to file that through your tenant and everything. And then you work through that process to get a scoping call set up. And they'll help walk through what you can do and your options for the O365 migration.
And like I said, I am not a cloud expert by any way, shape, or form. What I don't know is a lot on this, and that's why I'm dependent upon the consultants really to know their thing and help us along with it.
I just from the very get-go, though, going with the G3 instead of the Enterprise, you know, I get the intuitive nature of, oh, it should, let's do that, right? But you never know what Microsoft has done under the covers. That's a little bit of a tweak, and it's going to trip you up.
The problem is now we're on G3.
So I work for Microsoft. Colin, I'm not sure if we met, you know, but I do work there. I do think G is the right solution for any government because it is more CJIS compliant and it checks off more of the NIST requirements. That's the one where Microsoft is making sure everything is like checking all the boxes for sure. But you do see some government customers use E, but we strongly recommend all customers use G.
And I'm not saying that that's the wrong decision, but everything you research online, everything you're Googling about using YubiKeys and all this stuff, it's all probably going to be on the Enterprise, not on the G. And so you're going to believe that it should work this way, it all will work this way. And, you know, I don't know.
It gets really confusing because you use Azure Active Directory commercial, too, with the government tenant, instead of the Azure Active Directory for government. It's really...
Because that's the next thing is G3 tenants can only do direct Kerberos authentication if you're a high-level government agency in the DoD is what I was told.
And you're not on that right Office 365 tenant. There's technically 2 more levels of G, more like secure and everything, but that's you wouldn't know.
No, we're probably on G low or we're not on G high. So then it comes down to, all right, Kerberos authentication is needed for the YubiKeys to turn around and authenticate at least locally. So if I'm going, the idea was we would have the person have their computer, particularly the police department with the squad cars, have to put their YubiKey in. Whether we do passwordless or you have to put in a password and then authenticate the YubiKey, don't care all that much, but you have to put in your YubiKey and authenticate with the YubiKey just even to get past the Windows login screen to log onto your computer. That way, if someone steals your computer, they can't easily turn around and get into it without your YubiKey, which was the point of doing it. Yes, squad cars have been stolen, particularly in Shorewood, and they've gotten into it, and they've gotten into the computers. So it's like, no, we can't go there. If we're going to be doing this, let's do it right. That's what we wanted.
But again, even the questions you've been posing to people, like, can we go from 2010 to... Do we have to go through the interim versions? People are going to answer that as though they're on a single platform, the version, whatever, E3, or enterprise versus government. Can you mix those in the middle? Because who knows what they did in 2012 that's different with the G than the E that makes that process not work.
Which is part of the question of an architecture post-mortem is something we have to get ironed out. Can we do everything that we want to do on the G3 tenant, or do we have to start over?
And I don't know. No.
You can bash it all you want. It's
I'm
okay.
Saying, I don't know that any local firm is going to have that expertise. Maybe they do. Maybe they've done E to 3 and 2010 to 2025 and or 365 current version. Maybe they have, but I don't know. Otherwise, you're just playing with people guessing. I did it this way 3 years ago, and it seemed to work at
And that's very much
Salem, Wisconsin. Okay. So.
Would you look to Chicago for consultants?
I would, I would look to keep things as straightforward as possible, and then worry about throwing in transitions later on. Like, you are doing a version, I don't know what they call these, E3 versus G3.
Enterprise versus
I know, it's the flavor of the package, whatever it is. You know,
hosting platform.
Yeah. You're switching that. You're going to switch your domain names, or you might, and you might be required to. You're adding the keys midstream. and you're doing this upgrade. So you're trying to change a whole bunch of things. And in my world, doing one thing at a time usually eliminates all the variables that could crop up, because you can add keys after the fact. And I know that's the end game.
Yes.
But if you do let's straight up E3 to 0365. Got it upgraded? Good. We're happy. How do we take E3 and change it to a G3?
Well, that's a horrible process. You will not want to do that.
Okay, that may not be
That will be a nightmare situation.
That may be something you can't do. But can you do the keys later? Can you do and it's still a part of the project, but you're kind of breaking down the steps instead of doing them all at once, which leads you into, I'm not quite sure what's wrong.
And that's where we were doing, but with the test group. At first, let's get 80 authentication to work.
Yep.
Let's turn around and be able to sign in with just 80 authentication. And let's turn around and do the YubiKey. And you'll see on the 27th of December, the day of infamy, as soon as we turn around and install the Kerberos components on it, it literally blew up the synchronization server, where we could not, and Microsoft had no idea why it did it, but it completely and totally trashed 80 synchronization, where we literally had to use the backup 80 sync server that did not have the Kerberos on it, and then rebuild the one that we were working on. And that's when we did get to, and fortunately it was just the IT department that was logging into this at the time. We did not push it out to anyone other than just the IT department. So we were doing it in a procedural fashion, in a serial fashion for it. But then problems started occurring, and then no one had answers for it. So as we saw when we did with the postmortem analysis, when we turned around and did the installation of the Kerberos components for the YubiKey to work, it says right out on many sites that you cannot turn around and get it to sync with the government tenant. This is an open question. That you have to turn around in order for the PowerShell script to work. You have to turn around and point it to the E3 tenant. Then the PowerShell script works, and then you can turn around and authenticate, and the Active Directory object is now created in the local database for the Kerberos authentication. Or if you tried to run the installation PowerShell script and you said, yep, I'm on a government tenant, and you do it, it would consistently fail out. And Microsoft had no answer to why it was failing out. Others now, after the fact, other consultants think there might be something in that PowerShell script that is pointing to higher level tenants in there, and maybe you need to run a revised version of the PowerShell installation script for it in order for it to get to work. But if you follow the instructions, you cannot get it to install without pointing it to the E3 tenant. Now you're looking like I know the answer.
I don't know.
Never ran into that?
I'm not an identity engineer.
Or am I?
So have the conversation. He said
Conversation with Adrian,
Yep.
and then you can you can iron out everything you need to do from identity wise. Have the conversation with the fast track team. They'll confirm everything you can and you can't migrate.
So based upon all the restrictions and all the stuff to be learned, then it comes down to, do we stay with our domain and then use transforms? Do we have to migrate to a different domain? Or do we set up a secondary UPN prefix that might have problems with other 80 integrated applications?
Before you move, Dale had a point.
Right, in the post-mortem analysis here, I'm having a hard time understanding if we've addressed the issues that they say are our issues. And will those issues continue to be issues if we restart the project?
That could be. One of our issues is how our domain names are currently set up. So in a perfect world, with lots of time, I would say, all right, to take that out of the equation, I would do a domain migration. So I would spin up new Active Directory domain controllers, build a new forest, build a whole new domain, and then it's everyone out of one pool and then into another. And literally migrate everyone to franklinwi.gov and abandon ci.franklin.wi.us.
So
That way I then am conforming to the standard that the internal and external domain name is the same. But that's a lot of work. Anyone who's done domain migrations knows just how much work that is. And that can be months and months and months to turn around and do migration.
Well, you know, also spend months and months and months bashing your head against an issue in the middle of a project.
And get nowhere with it, and the consultants are getting rich. Yes.
I think what you just addressed are the technical issues, but I don't think that's where the problem is.
What do you mean?
Elaborate.
Elaborate. I'm not entirely following.
Well, I think we touched on it a little while ago, which is we didn't really do a proper business analysis.
Correct.
Right? And so in the project restart, that's what I wanted to see in the project restart.
I would agree.
And I had a hard time finding that in the project restart. So what I would expect is much more on that. And that kind of goes to Greg's point, which is maybe we ought to get more help than just technical help to get this project on track. Right? We really need to understand the business and how that drives the technology first. This meeting tells me that we're really attacking it from a technical standpoint and trying to solve it from the bottom to the top to the bottom. So that would be my recommendation. Back up and readdress from a business standpoint. Does it make sense for the CI dot whatever versus the Franklin, all of that stuff? What's the business that's driving that decision? Okay.
Well, right now, the topmost business decision is to keep your insurance, which you're under a deadline to get some things done. Now, there's probably a myriad of ways you could get those things done. I don't know.
But do they have to be technical things that need to be done, or do they have to? Do we have to show the insurance?
They won't
company
insure
that
us if we're not off of
Their technical.
2010
2010, you gotta have 2FA.
and 2FA.
The 2010 went out of support in 2010.
So, for instance, could you upgrade to 2013, 2015 on-prem and get YubiKeys?
I mean, those are the things.
And you get out of the business issue,
Right.
and then you go back to the bigger. Okay, we got to get to 365.
I mean, they want us not just off of 2010. They want the local Exchange server
Understood.
in the cloud.
Understood. But what's the minimum, right? What do you need to get past the
What are the
main
steps?
driving business issue
Right.
Yeah,
that's
but you
going
can-
to kill us if we don't have
Yep.
insurance?
What's the minimum viable product that the insurance company is happy with? And then you show them the progress over time of here's the plan, right? After we did this, the requirements. What is steps B and C after that to get to that blue dot of being, on the cloud, whatever.
And do we have to be on Entra ID,
Entra ID is the new Azure ID.
right? But to do YubiKey, that'd be the question. Yes. So there's no way to
Everything
do
with
it.
Microsoft, any authentication is moving to Entra. So
Right. I just saying from is pre-Entra, right? Pre all that stuff. How would have hardware keys worked before that? So
And you don't have to use a YubiKey. There are other hardware-based tokens. YubiKey is still probably recognized as probably being one of the more secure ones, at least as far as the CGIS regulations are concerned. But you could go with an RSA Secure ID as well, which has been around for a long, long, long time.
and it goes really back to that conversation, right? Andre, is that his name?
Oh, Andre?
Andre.
Yeah, Andre. So that conversation, it's got to get to. Can we get to? Is there a path that to get us where we need to be? That's clean, to your point, or is there? Do we have to think about this in more steps? And then what are those steps, right? And anytime we do bigger projects, we do a lot of them where we do a first phase. We would term it phase zero. A lot of companies phase zero kind of things, right? Which is kind of to your point, figuring out like what are all the things you're going to run into and spend some time on that, because you either find them. It's way cheaper to find them up front than it is like right now, right? Is partway through and then find them. So we, especially this kind of stuff, we would spend a decent amount of time on that. Now, I get in the situation we were in, we had this time crunch thing, but I think we got to figure out that we still got to do those things, right? You still got to do, if we run into the next thing that's got a time crunch, we still got to do some form of front end analysis to determine what we're going to run into, because otherwise we're just going to repeat the same thing again.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And I don't know, from what I was hearing your comments, Dale, I took that more from a project management perspective, that key discovery, we kind of had the requirements, I think, but the discovery was never done.
And I would agree with that too. I Bailey did
Right.
not have that in their project management.
And I wanted to highlight the fact that this does, again, if it does, I haven't seen it. And that is the deficiencies that this company is pointing out that we have. How are they being addressed?
Mhm.
Will they be addressed in this project startup? I mean, that's what I don't see.
Hopefully I wrote it there. I wrote this like a week and a half ago, so I'm trying to remember what I wrote. But if I find it, I'll point it out.
All right.
Hopefully I did.
One comment I'll just make is, because you commented about an upgrade to Exchange 2013 and 2016. Exchange 2013 is technically out of support as well right now, so you can't really, that's not going to solve the insurance problem probably.
Understood.
And 2016, there is no 15. It goes out of, no worries, it goes out of support in October of this year. So no more security patches then. So I don't know if insurance would be jumping up and down about that either. So at least until October, they'd be happy.
But is
It's
October
better.
more than 90 days?
It is.
It's more than 90 days.
And it's technically patched right now. So
Thank you.
All right, Delvin is departing at 6:44. Yeah, I think that's just what I'm saying. Is we're doing a lot. I get we want to do it all, and it's the right thing to do.
And we did break it down also to two phases. They had it as originally as one big project. It's like, no, we got to cut
yeah,
authentication.
but even the
and
first
building.
phase is pretty big, or whatever. So simplify for speed, or complicate and take longer. And we ran into maybe complication. I'm not saying that I'm right, but I just hear a lot of moving parts, a lot of change in the mix, which change. The more changes you make, the more risk you have in a project, and it's all technical. And so, yes, back to Dale's point. Why are we doing this to begin with? What's the driving reason? Let's figure out a way to get the minimum, so that we can get them off our back for 90 days, and then we'll come back and we'll get the rest. And we can do it, hopefully, with better advice and counsel. I don't know, but maybe you'll find the magic bullet and get it. Take care. Probably just a single batch file.
So the reason why I decided to halt the project and reboot it is after 4 months of work, reliable authentication to a 2FA was not in place, and anything that was doing was constantly generating errors, and it just didn't work, period. The entire month of January was spent resolving Active Directory synchronization issues and resolving 2FA problems. Microsoft support, which was LTI Mindtree on this, they did an atrocious job of helping us with the tickets. They spent a tremendous amount of time handing off problems from one support group over to another support group, and there was an entire week that would lapse as it was moved from support group over to support group.
and that's where I would encourage. I can file for an
Yep.
escalation, so please reach out to me in the future
Yep.
because I can get a little fire lit under them.
And then COF staff, we started researching and resolving a lot of the problems, and I started giving Microsoft answers and technical articles, which they should have been able to find themselves. It was questionable if YubiKeys can even function under our existing split domain structure. Should we look at a different 2FA method of implementation? And it was questionable if COF can, if we could turn around and do Kerberos authentication while on a J3 tenant. Should we be rebuilt on E3, or is hosting G3 still the same foot? So these are questions that need to be resolved, and doing it in the middle of the project is not a good time. I called it a feasibility analysis, whether we call it a structured post-mortem analysis. I 100% agree that yes, we need to do an analysis on post-mortem of what went wrong, look at our infrastructure, and look at how we're set up, and look at what we're trying to do, and can we do what we already have in place? Is what we have in place that we have said these are internal obstacles, can we turn around and accomplish our project deliverables when some of these questions are still out there in the open? We have to have those answered before we read them. So it's like, there's, I think, a need for a feasibility analysis. Given the constraints of the original projects, can the deliverables be accomplished? Will the domain migration be needed to reduce future problems? With the UPN being different, how will this impact Microsoft support and future changes? And clearly also that iBailey oversold their expertise. The vendor had limited experience on boarding government agencies. The vendor didn't have the depth of security authentications, authenticators, or CJIS compliance. The vendor was reliant heavily on outsourced Microsoft secondary support. This is not the vendor's core competency. That iBailey is actually an accounting and an auditing firm. And they do this as on the side. And zero effort, even after I turned around and gave them the notice, they made no efforts to make amends or try to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. All they basically said, if you're not happy, go. And that tells me immediately, you're with the wrong firm. If they're so happy to turn around and let me walk out the door. All right, if we look at the project triangle, well, there are some hard considerations here from a financials. 129,692 dedicated.
Just to, you know,
I can breathe through this if you want to save time. Yep,
they claim that we never told them that we're on Exchange 2010.
that was absolutely wrong.
I mean, that's what they say. Is
That's what
that
they said, but it's absolutely wrong. And I
these
refuse
points
their...
that Dale is complaining that we aren't.
No, they were told, and I have an actual statement of work from them when they gave us original one that did phase 1 and phase 2, and then I had them break it out. I still have that original proposal, and I think I might have distributed it, and it literally is all right in there. It's in their own statement of work, so that was absolutely misinformation in their letter.
Why did we hire these guys? What was the compelling reason?
Because they looked that they had a really good
they
depth
had the
of
one guy
experience,
who was from Microsoft.
which I didn't know it was just one guy at the time, but it looked like they had a good rounded support team that could handle us, that had the expertise in there. They claimed they did other government agencies. They promised us 30 days, 30 days to turn around and get up and running with phase 1. Then we would halt it for the presidential election, and then do phase 2 with the exchange migration before the end of the year.
Just like the assessment project, which is now getting a whole lot of public visibility and lawsuits, and I want money back on my taxes. I am one of the few people in this city whose property taxes went down because I was overpaying for the past 2 years under that previous assessor. Just like that didn't come through the Technology Commission.
Mm-hmm.
This didn't come through the Technology Commission. That cannot continue, in my opinion. I'm just making a bold statement that cannot continue.
We actually did.
Despite the 90 days.
Now, the hiring of the assessor and the assessment firm is not a Technology Commission issue.
Understood.
So,
but the technology to get the data converted would have been a red flag. We would have had a red flag. You may not have been able to do anything about it.
we did actually have a meeting and approve their current system that they're using right now with forward appraisal. Under Peggy Steno, with them turning around and outsourcing this and then running all their data up into the cloud, that never went through the Technology Commission for the simple fact that they assumed that this was a cloud-based system and we don't have to turn around and do it. And that was made by the Director of Administration decision. And I'm running into that. I'm running into that as well. We have they just signed off on a thing with Motorola body cameras. I didn't even know they got funding for it. Next thing I know, they signed a contract. It went to the Common Council to sign off on it, and it never went to the Technology Commission.
But why are we here?
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we here? To review projects.
I'm one
That was
person.
my
I can't change the
question.
fact. I cannot change how government runs. When they do a loop around me and they loop around the Technology Commission, what can I do?
Where have I heard this?
That was my question in my head 20 minutes ago. Why are we here?
I know. And as you notice, if the director of administration was sitting here right now, I'd be ripping her a new one. Let's not turn around and sat down in front of me and had a one-on-one meeting since the 29th of December. And this is now on open microphone. But yet I'm her direct report. Why is the mayor not here? I agree with you 100%. But it comes down to it's the laurels and the lashes. When they don't do what they're supposed to be doing and it doesn't go through the Technology Commission, what honestly is the retribution for it? Now, I screwed up. I should have taken this through the Technology Commission. I will openly admit it. I'm rebooting this problem because I should have went this through legal counsel and I should have went through the Technology Commission. And I am sorry for me not taking this here. But I also let it be known, there are other things going on right now where they're bypassing the Technology Commission. And I yell and I hiss and I spit about it and they can ignore me. So beyond throwing my resignation down, I don't know what else I can do. I feel your pain.
Maybe we have to all resign.
I don't know, or go to the meeting.
Can you get seats on those other commissions or the other spots where they review them? So then it's kind of, because what I've seen in organizations is it's, when IT is siloed, it's left off in its own little world and they kind of are very reactive to,
I
business
knew
group
they were
wants this
coming
problem.
down with the proposal. I actually was in a convention and I got a call from Jason Ireland saying, guess what? We have to turn around and put in body cameras because the DOJ is now turning around and insisting us, and the state DA will not prosecute any of our cases unless we get body cameras. So this is going in. I went, oh my God, that's going to just blow up storage and everything else. And I picked up the phone immediately when I was in the hallway for lunch, and I called Kelly about this. So I knew the project was coming, but I knew they also had to get funding. Next thing I know, they got funding, they got a grant, and it's on the Common Council action sheet. And it's like, wait a minute here, folks. This needs to turn around and be put in front of the Technology Commission before you turn around and start moving with it. Oh, well, it's all 100% cloud-based. Why do they need to approve it? Because they still approve cloud-based applications. All I can do is keep hitting them on it.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can just keep on hitting on them and talking to the absolute heads. Chief, you did not do this, and they are really pissed.
I guess specifically for this, Jim, in my humble opinion, I don't think we need to drain the rest of your slides on the topic.
That's fine.
I think if you just tell us, we know the issue, what's your next steps? I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to drain it.
To Dale's very astute comment, yes, there's plenty of things that they have to let the business decisions drive it. That should probably be even fleshed out in the statement of work, even more clearly on it. We have to look at doing that feasibility and infrastructure analysis, that pre-cloud flight migration analysis before we go ahead and start launching this up again. That has to be done, and that has to be in the statement of work that we're going to have to do it. And we're going to have to turn around and look at other consulting companies to help us out, because I am not a cloud expert on this. Maybe they can put Humpty Dumpty together again with some phone calls and figure this out and get us up and running. But my staff has already been to the Microsoft one-week training courses on basically cloud, on Office 365 cloud administration. I haven't even been to the courses yet. They're ahead of me right now at this. I need to get education on some of this before we start rolling it out as well. Too much being done at once. You saw in December all the projects that were done and accomplished in 2024 at this point. That Jim going to class has to be part of this. Getting the pre-flight analysis done has to be a part of this. Getting new vendors on board, going through the Technology Commission, vet the vendors, make sure that they're actually as qualified as they say that they actually are, and then go back to the Common Council. Go to Jesse, make sure we actually have a boilerplate contract, because if it goes south for the winter, I want to make sure that I actually have all my legal provisions in there for it. So that may slow it down as well. And unfortunately, the Microsoft meter is running that we're paying $8,000 a month for licensing that we can't use right now. And that's the real kick in the teeth right now, that they started licensing in November when they had the tenant built, and instead of doing it with 5 people, they put all 250 in, and I cannot stop that contract and get out of that until it comes to term in November, which is the thing that just burns me to all hell. I felt I was completely and totally taken advantage of it, and legal won't touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, it's a sunk cost. You were going to pay it anyhow, so it's, I get it.
So just one last.
The worst is going to be when they say, oh yeah, well, G3 won't work in your situation. You've got to go to E3 for the next year, and then you can go to G3, and then you got to buy a whole new E3. I mean, I don't. That would be the kicker.
So I had just one comment I wanted to make.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make many. The work that was done by Eide Bailey, do we have to back that all out? Or can we use what's there? That should
To
be
my
part of-
knowledge.
That should be part of your assessment.
Again, I've asked legal counsel, and I'm getting crickets chirping. It really irritates the hell out of me right now. And I can't even get my own city attorney to turn around and respond back to me at this point. But from my understanding of it, we own the G3 tenant. I may have to still keep their user ID in there because they have Ingram Micro, who turns around and is the licensee who everything is purchased through. So I still have to keep their IDs out onto the system, but they are not supposed to turn down the tenant. We own that tenant. But I asked them in my response back, I sent them the termination notes, they gave me that, and I turned around and sent another one out in response to it. I needed confirmation, and that was one of the points I made, that yes, they are not going to turn around and shut down that G3 tenant, that we still have access to it, even though that we are terminating the contract with them.
Right, I was just acting as a reseller.
Yes,
We actually own the product.
we own the licenses, yes.
License.
Subscriptions.
Not that
I'm done.
Well, and any configuration and anything that actually were in there touching, I don't know if they did much, that they should not undo or go in and destroy.
I may have to be forced able to keep their ID there, but I might be able to lower his user rights
Right.
than what he can turn around and do in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they only have one account for it. He knows my password, so I may have to change my password on it. But there's only a handful of accounts right now in there that are active. So it's not hard to go in there and start diminishing user rights.
Limit the damage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the relaunch?
I'm not going to do events. Here's my postpartum analysis. All right, relaunch. We should do a infrastructure cloud pre-launch migration analysis that should be done by a firm that is independent from the project and be fully outlined as potential problems and challenges that may need to be remedied prior to administration. We may have to put an RFQ or RFP on that unless I can turn around and somehow get the build in the firm, but then that takes away the independence. One could say that the firm should do that as part of their project plan. My humble opinion, it should be in there. If you do a lot of this, that should be part of it. But should it be independent versus by a completely, totally different firm versus the company that we actually contract with doing that analysis?
I think you can contract for that first piece and find the expertise you need, which is the important part. And if they have the expertise you need, you're likely to contract with them for the next part. or which may be 2 phases or maybe 3 phases or whatever. So at that point, they may not be independent, but certainly they're independent from this current company and whatever. I think you can.
Now, the two that I'm looking at right now, one is DigiCorp that actually onboarded the city of Mequon. And the other one is Converge IT, also known as Paragram Development System, who we've worked a lot with. They were bought out by Converge IT. They've got a good amount of depth of national resources that it is a national company for it. And I just got off the horn with them this afternoon for it. We're going to have some additional conversations on it. But those are the two that I'm looking at right now. I've got some other ones. Expedient is, even though they don't do it, they have another company, I want to say it was SCS, that they were going to turn around and refer me to. So I'm in the process right now of just talking to these firms and then looking at what is their depth in being able to help us turn around and do much.
I don't recall, was there an RFP written for this project?
No.
If we do a full RFP, RFQ, which means it turns around and goes out to bid, kind of like we did with they're doing right now for the sound monitor at Outsource Consulting, that we have to turn around and actually post on a governmental board for it, and then they have to then turn around and get the RFP and RFQ and then
We chose not to
resubmit
do
it.
that because of the timing.
Correct. That normally takes at least 8 to 10 weeks to go ahead and go through that process. It's tedious.
Well, and the key things are to understand where they have done, where and when they have done part 1 of the technical aspect, part 2 of the technical aspect, part 3 of the technical aspect. At least the things you know about. You may uncover more as part of this, but when you get to the phase of hiring that firm, and maybe that's the firm you're looking at to do this first phase,
And
it is to understand where, when, and who's going to be assigned to me that's done this.
right.
Because the firm in Mequon, you said they did this in 2016, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's 9 years ago.
I know.
Joe Blow has gone from.
And as he said too,
Keycorp.
I may be looking outside of Milwaukee
You may be.
for this as well.
You may be. But to get it done right, and not waste any time, don't let them, oh, we have lots of people and lots of reach and lots of this and lots of that. I want to talk to the guy. I want to talk to Joe or Mary who's done this and let me know that they're going to work on this. And then I want you to write them into the SOW. I mean,
Good points.
these consulting companies,
There's a
small
lot of
consulting
snake
companies,
oil out there.
There's a lot of snake oil. I get it. And you get burned because
I know. I mean, take a look at Heartland, which is one that proposed it, and after getting royally burned from it, I even questioned their ability to turn around and do it. Also looking at a technology feasibility study tied in with that pre-launch analysis, which would be determined if UPN issues, government chief tenants, 2FA constraints, allow for authentication at both the desktop and the Entra ID level, that we need to make sure that the goal here is to be able to sign in with the hardware token at the desktop and it feeds through to Entra ID through the entire chain, that I'm not just going to be able to authenticate to one or the other at this point. Or even worse, I'm going to have 2 authentication mechanisms depending on what I'm trying to do.
And I think there needs to be an analysis of the pros and cons of reconciling the domains. Do you go with CI dot or you go with, city of, that sort of thing? In the conversation, I certainly heard the pros and cons, but that needs to be part of.
Get it on paper.
it's a definite roadblock.
Exactly.
The pros and cons of domain migration.
Correct.
And Jim, you may not find, because this is a unique project, government, versions of things you're trying to do, Exchange server, etc. You may not find a company that has expertise in all of these things or a background in all of these things. And that may be okay. Maybe you need to have, sort of, again, break down the project. You do step 1, which gets through their expertise. Step 2, you bring in the 2FA expert, or the Active Directory expert and the 2FA expert. I don't know, but you may not find that all-encompassing magic bullet.
Yeah, the 2FA expert might say, hey, you need to be here before
Right,
even
before I
talk to
touch
you
it,
about
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
We just don't want to be somebody's learning project.
Yeah, because it is an ugly science project. You're going from 15-year-old software.
Yeah, some of this you're just not going to be able to avoid, but it's step by step, as you pointed out. You know,
Yeah, I get that you can't break it down.
the add-on stuff.
And as I look at, all right, if we turn around and take a big blue sky approach to this, if we look at all alternatives, including do we even stay with Office 365? Do we go to somebody else for it? Do we need to bring an IAM on it? So it's like one of the things, all right, I think we're going to be investing enough. It is a sunken cost right now. We have the existing Microsoft licensing contract. It would be really nice to be able to utilize all of that money or a portion of that money. So not all of it's $106,000 sunken cost for it. So moving to another platform like Google Workspace, well, then the whole amount of money would then be a sunken cost. Attorneys are not giving me any direction if I can get out of the contract or not. So could we turn around and do an alternative of moving somewhere else? I would say our best choice at this moment is try to keep the licensing, and I'm kind of hearing that tonight, keep the licensing that we have right now and see if you can onboard and make this successful with what you have thus far. Don't just start 100% from scratch and go to a completely and totally different platform.
You would then add in training, change management, document conversions.
Yeah.
I mean, again, talk about adding more ugliness into the soup.
Huge business back there. You're going to change.
And the main problem is we did get AD synchronization to work. The main deliverable that didn't work was 2FA. So when we're rebooting, it's the 2FA that's going to be the fly in the ointment at this point. And maybe we have to relook at using UbiCall. Maybe we have to look at other different services. And can we do 2FA differently, even if it means bringing in an IAM that might be able to do it more natively than what we're able to do right now? That should be all folded directly into the feasibility study.
And what I'm not seeing here is the CJIS requirements around 2FA.
That literally is 70 pages.
I know, but you got to find somebody who knows that. Otherwise,
it is me right now.
We
risk. As you'll find out, I've been promoted for that, and I'm at least internally with CJIS at this point. Mm-hmm. I'm the person who's recommending the 2FA strategy based upon the new revised 5.9.5 guidelines.
Okay, is there anything other than 2FA as part of that 5. whatever?
They mapped entirely to the entire NIST framework. So everything within 5.9.5.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing. Yeah, that's why we're on NIST, and that's why things are working right now. But that's one of the reasons why I'm creating all of these policy docs, and that's why I spent my entire holiday weekend doing nothing but writing policies right now, because those policies had to be in place for the CJIS stuff. So, for example, media access rules, physical security, all that's in CJIS.
Yep.
So CJIS isn't just authentication and how you lock down the system, it's a whole lot more. And we're done.
Any further comments on this lovely topic?
Just a question about 2FA. What was the actual problem with 2FA? Where did it break? Was that because of the inability to justify the domains?
I don't know. I get an error, and I cannot tell you why error is occurring, because the analysis being done by the consultants, including LTI Mindtree, they were not even looking at the logs for the local authentication. So I know I could authenticate to Entra using my YubiKey. So if I open up a web browser and I log into Azure and I sign in as my normal user ID, J. Metelsky at franklinwi.gov, put in my YubiKey, hit it, it authenticated me and it recognized me logging in through the web browser. What wasn't working was the Windows Hello logging into the workstation. So if I'm on Windows 11 and I reboot my computer, I now need to log into my workstation, aka logging into the domain, which is also logging into Entra. I turn around and put my YubiKey in, hit the button, and I get a wonderful error message on it. And what that wonderful hexadecimal error message, 0C0005F, I think it was. Don't know.
And it was consistent? You said it was...
Yes, consistent.
Okay, it wasn't flaky. It wasn't...
No, you always got that exact same error off of it. And I couldn't even find any other instance of what the error was. It's like, all right, where in the authentication process is it breaking down because you're getting that error? Is it not having a problem? Is the key not authenticating to the local domain controller? Is it not authenticating to the local Kerberos component? Is it not finding that? Is it not going to Entra? I have no idea. No idea.
We can't have, if we wanted to address that specific issue, could we not bring any expertise in that could do like a wire trace and actually look at the transactions and see where it's actually breaking at a transaction level?
So you should be able to open up with your Office 365 subscription, open up a case in the Azure portal, and get engaged with the Microsoft support engine. And they should be the one to be able to investigate what's going on. They should have...
We're with the Microsoft support engine.
Keyword is should that I mentioned there. And that's... I can just say from my own personal experience many years ago, Kerberos cases are some of the most complex for identity, and it's horrible. But that's where I would encourage because I did not file any escalations on those cases that you had, that you reach out to me proactively and I can file for an escalation to get you to a higher level engineer. Because I talked to the engineer you had in Charlotte. He's pretty wonderful. Not the Navy. But, yeah.
The Adrian, he was the one.
Not Adrian either.
Oh.
There was another name. So
there were many.
Yeah, there was. I spoke to a lot of people.
It just seems to me if you can solve that problem, we ease some of the pressure that's on this.
And that's where it's going to get into a person who really has done this a lot.
Right.
Whether it be a Microsoft engineer that may be able to turn around and help me, because it didn't happen originally, maybe I can find the right resource over there. But if I can't, then it's like I'm going to need a consulting firm, because it's well over my skill set, to turn around and tell me, why isn't this working? And that's also hopefully the person that can turn around and say, based upon your feasibility analysis and your pre-cloud flight migration analysis, everything we see here says this should be working. There isn't anything here that we find that's off key. This should work, and this is supported.
Or you get the bad news. This won't work the way you have it.
And that's part of your relaunch plan, where I would suggest that we have that call with Adrian to understand, just walk through what you have, just to have that, hey, let's set the level. This is what I'm thinking. This is what we have. What's right, what's wrong. Adrian will have a brief call with you to talk about that. And then also filing that fast track and get engaged with the fast track team. And you tell them what we currently have with Exchange 10. What can we do? What are our migration options? They'll lay it out for you. And then,
are they going to have any problem that one of my main problems is YubiKey, and this may or may not be considered a Microsoft problem? I just don't want someone to turn around and say, "Oh, it's hardware related. Go talk to YubiKey." Open up the trap door, and down they go.
Identity, and break it down into two things, right? Identity and access management. That is the question for Adrian and everything like that, to talk about that. The Office 365 migration part, because you're talking about redoing that relaunch analysis. Doing that relaunch analysis of, all right, what will I need to do for Exchange to Office 365 or Exchange Server Online? So you're also doing that analysis. So you have two separate analyses going on. So the one that's the identity, and the one that's kind of the starting point and the good.
Okay.
That's what we're.
Is anyone else's head hurting?
No more talking about Kerberos, please.
Okay. Item number 5, and no, we have 6. Item number 5, the NIST security policy for media protection.
I will let it up to the group. Last time I literally sat here and read the document to the group and find errors. How do you want to handle because there's going to be plenty more than these.
Yeah.
That how's the procedure going to work that as advisor? Do we just want to open it up and then anyone who's made notes on it, then we talk about the particular note on it, or do we want to actually go word from word in the document and then identify the stuff?
No.
I'm saying a lot.
I read it and it
no.
looks good.
I don't want you to go through it word by word.
What we could do, because I wasn't sure if you're going to do the old way, so I didn't read
prefer
them.
not.
I didn't read them as you would expect. Maybe what you should do is briefly introduce what the purpose of each one of these is, and then and how it fits in the overall scheme.
Okay.
And then we come back either at the next meeting with comments or send you comments to your email address.
That'll work for me too. Then I can just make a master document red line and then add the comments in red line.
Okay. So maybe we'll do that with items 5 and 6. The 6 is the physical environment.
Yep. Let's start with item number 5, media protection policy. Very simple. This is government. I can't shut down people's USB ports for it. That ain't gonna work. In a private firm or publicly traded company, you may be able to do that, but the people are going to bring in media devices for us, and we're going to have to be able to look at them, whether it's a person's building plans, whether it's one police agency giving physical evidence to another police agency on it, that there's always going to be a point in time where someone is going to turn around and bring in a USB flash drive or a USB hard drive and want to copy something. And that's also, the media policy doesn't really go into control of data protection all that much for it. They're more along the lines of how am I going to make sure that data is not exfiltrated out of the organization, or someone's bringing something in and potentially bringing in a virus or malware and putting it onto our network for it. So in a nutshell, one major component, it is the hard drives on all of our equipment should be encrypted. And when a piece of computer, so we're looking at the life cycle now of the computer equipment, when a piece of electronic equipment is decommissioned, we have to take the drive out of it, and then we have to officially decommission and destroy that drive. And it's not going to be a DoD wipe. We have this procedure with CJIS already with the police department. We take all of the hard drives from out of the computers, including all the new 250 ones that are coming and rolling out right now. So we have 250 hard drives to take out. Mm-hmm. We store them. We put them in the back locked IT storeroom. And then in December, there's a company that comes in and they literally shred the drives and turn it into dust.
Put them in a chipper.
It's about as bad as you can. And then they give us a certificate that they destroyed the hard drive for it. That's our procedure on how we destroy data. And all of the newer computers are coming in with an Opal drive. All the laptops, we aren't going to be doing BitLocker or anything. It's now hardware-based encryption based on the Opal hardware encrypted drive on it. So all new computers that are being provided now will automatically have their local drives automatically encrypted on it. The only other thing that they have with the media protection is some general policies that if you're in an airport, you have to watch your computer bag. Your computer bag has to be taken with you on it. You can't leave things alone. It's pretty generic off of it. And then any drive, the USB flash drive that you do take and have it, if there's CJIS data on it, because this is more aligned with a CJIS policy, but if there is confidential or protected information on that, you literally have to turn around and put a label on it that literally identifies this as a sensitive PII or SPII information or CJIS information. So if they're going to give a USB flash drive, which they have done already, of video files to the DA's office, and it contains CJIS video evidence on it, they have to literally put on a label on that flash drive before they put it in the mailing envelope and send it to the DA's office that this is CJIS information. So it's a labeling procedure.
Are those flash drives encrypted?
The recommendation is to make them encrypted, yes.
Okay, so we'll review that one. And then the physical and environmental security.
This goes with anything of how you protect your data environment for it. A lot of it is physical access control of who physically has access to the actual data in the systems, of who has access to your data center. Now, when I wrote this is going to change a little bit. The Johnson Controls is right now in the middle of a project of putting in card readers for City Hall. I have indicated here that we do not have card readers at City Hall because when I wrote this, we don't have card readers. But we soon will for it, and we soon will have card readers for the data center. Anywhere that we have a card reader on it, just like PCI, you can get the log from the card reader. That's good enough, so you know who's coming in and who's coming out of your data centers, along with your building and everything else. Anywhere that you don't have it, then you're going to have to turn around and keep a manual log of whenever someone comes in and is doing maintenance and work inside your area. So you know you have some form of knowledge of who was in the area at what given period of time. City Hall, the library, and the police department have video surveillance cameras. We do not have surveillance cameras at any of the fire stations, DPW. Actually, they do have their own closed capture TV, and they do have one over at the water department, but that's not integrated with the police department. So it talks about video surveillance, where we have it and where we don't have it. The other big thing is access to the wiring closets and UPSs. So all the IDS, all the switches are all on UPS power. In some places we have generator backups for it, other places we don't. We listed the areas where we have that. And then what areas do we have switches where you don't have it lockable? And in a perfect world, you would put a switch in a lockable wiring closet and people would have access to it, but that's not what we have here. Quite often, we have a lot of wall-mounted cabinets on it, and the cabinet they have may have a lock on it or it may not have a lock on it for it. So over time, we're going to have to look at the IDS and then turn around, and as we flip out equipment, we need to make sure that when the equipment gets flipped out, that would be a good time to turn around and put a secure cabinet on there that has a lock on it. Then they have some strange things that questions why is it in CJIS, but it is. Emergency shutoff, and where's the emergency power? I have no idea. It's pretty much in facilities. If I had to go and say quick hit the emergency switch to kill all power of the building, I have no idea where to go for it. They want emergency lighting, which for here would be kind of insane because 15 seconds you have the lights go out, in 15 seconds the generator kicks in. So I just don't move for 15 seconds, the light will come back on again. But they insist that you have emergency lights, so I'm just going to go down to Costco and buy the little lanterns and literally put it hook it on the wall in there, and that's going to be completely perfectly fine.
Lights on your exit signs automatically turn on? Power goes on?
Oh, those will.
Those, yeah.
But that's not in a closet.
It's not in the closet.
That's not. Yeah, I don't have that in the data center. It's to protect people so they don't fall and hurt themselves. I got it.
So you can make that an option in your policy here, that you can either have independent lighting or you can wait for the.
That's what I'm doing.
Building
That's in
generator.
here. When you look at the description in place for it, it's like what we're going to be doing is you'll have mobile emergency lighting. In other words, a Costco little lantern. Mobile.
Mobile enabled.
Cell phone.
Also your cell phone?
Yes.
Cell phone.
Yeah, that would work too.
Don't write that in there because that might be.
They have fire protection in there. It's like now this is an IT thing when normally it used to be a facilities thing. But yes, we all do have fire protection. They were testing it today. That's why my hearing's still bad. Then temperature and humidity controls. Out of the big thing, this is where we're really as a city bad is our AC for our data centers. None of our places, including the police department, they're using a little air conditioning system that looks like one of those things that you would go when you're in the Bahamas to cool off your hotel room. It's just these little, and that's what's keeping. So they got the main building ones, but then they got these little tiny air conditioners for it. That's what they consider data center air conditioning. So that's where we are bad in, but that's going to be a while for capital for them to change it. And then water damage protection on it, and also with halon gas. If the sprinklers go on, it's going to hit the data center. Period. We don't have halon gas in there. They won't pay for halon gas or whatever it is today for it. So if the water goes on with the sprinklers, it could damage everything in the computer rooms, and that's the way it is. And unless I put a plastic tarp over it, and I have done it.
That's your mitigating control.
That's my mitigating control.
Automated tarp deployments.
That's another.
And we also don't have an alternative work site either. So that's the physical security policies.
Okay, so maybe if I get to suggest, maybe we get feedback to Jim within a week, March 5th, 40 pages of documentation. So you email.
That's easy to do.
Email Jim directly. Do not copy anyone else for our policies.
And mind you, I was doing this in massive sessions over Christmas and Thanksgiving, so I might have blurred out a little bit mentally. If you see something there that linguistically makes no sense whatsoever, it's probably because I was doing it at 10:30 at night.
Christmas Carol music they're written in there. Songs. All right, item number 7, technical issues review.
Okay, with the retirement of Captain Daniel Morris in January 2025, Jason Ireland has been promoted to PD Captain and will be the main business lead for all IT projects and initiatives at the City of Franklin Police Department. CJIS roles will be realigned due to changes in both technical knowledge and skill sets. Director Metelsky will be assigned the CJIS role of CSO, CJIS Systems Officer, and ISO, CJIS System Agency Security Officer. Captain Ireland will act in the role of CJIS TAC, CJIS Terminal Agency Coordinator, and LASO, Local Agency Security Officer. Cindy Mankey will retain her existing role of CJIS AC, Agency Coordinator, and TAC. These changes were approved by Chief of Police Craig Learman. In previous years, the police department assigned all roles only to sworn police officers. However, the massive changes to the CJIS 5.9.5 framework and new controls and requirements mandate realignment to individuals with the deepest security knowledge. Within the role, the Director of IT now has full authority to set and implement all security policies and procedures at the Franklin Police Department. In other words, I do not have to go for anyone's approval anymore to implement security policy changes or procedures. Unfortunately, I'm now part in charge of the audit, so I will be signing it. Idemnia version 1 of squad fingerprint scanners are end of life and will need to be replaced by the 2026 capital budget. It was discovered by accident where Mofo IDENT utility was intermittently working between squads, and changes needed to be made to the comp file to get the older hardware working. The vendor did not send out any form of end-of-life notice informing users that they will need to upgrade the hardware. The software is used to collect fingerprints out in the field and both query and register imprints to the State Department of Justice database. All Indemnity units will need to be upgraded to the newest version 2.0 of the hardware terminals in the 2026 capital budget. More fun, GIS portfolio licensing will be fully retired by 2026, where the desktop edition of the software will no longer be supported. The GIS department is preparing for the change, moving towards named subscriptions, as this could significantly increase costs, requiring more licenses. GIS is being very heavily used within the engineering, planning, DPW, and water utilities. In many cases, GIS layers are being used to record asset inventories and equipment locations, making this an essential tool beyond just graphical maps. There will be a challenge containing ArcGIS licensing costs in the future. And the notes on Director's Operation. The PBX project is near completion with only a few terminal adapters left to install. The 2024 Franklin initiated a very significant project to retire the local PBXs and move all phone services to Ring Central Cloud. On January 22nd, can't say that, 2025, the Franklin Police Department ported all phone services to the cloud with no interruptions in services attributed to the migration. PD Dispatch, a very complicated migration, did not experience any outages or drop calls as part of the changeover. Overall, Cornerstone did an exceptional job from both the technical and project management standpoint in the migration of 8 legacy PBXs to the cloud-based phone and video conferencing services. AT&T FlexReach services, along with Zoom video conferencing, are in the process of being canceled. Old Bell wire phone systems are no longer used within the city of Franklin. This will offer greater flexibility and offer users the ability to move to more advanced call routing and working from home. On February 18th, the Common Council approved the contract to establish body cameras and cloud-based storage for the Franklin Police Department. As part of this service, the WatchGuard in-squad video surveillance systems will be migrated from the local to Motorola cloud storage. All data archiving, redaction, and retrieval of either body camera or squad video storage will be processed in the cloud. It is estimated that this will save 56 terabytes of local storage that does not have to be provisioned with the new SAN in 2026. This will be a significant cost savings in potential capital requirements for both production and data backup storage. So all of the in-squad WatchGuard video surveillance footage that we're keeping locally on the 3PAR will be migrated over to the Motorola storage cloud in addition to everything that they're doing with body cameras. And that is being covered under the grant that the city has gotten for this, governmental grant. And it's either, I think it's 3 years, but it might be 5, if I remember what I saw in the Common Council action sheet.
Who's doing that project?
Motorola.
So there's a project?
Yes. And, well, it's in the process of, there's a statement of work that they turn around and wrote for it, but there's going to be a large project kickoff meeting. We're going to go deep into technical requirements for it. Again, went to the Common Council without being here.
Any metadata associated with those videos that's not embedded in the file itself?
There's plenty of metadata associated with it, and it is a private cloud that's hosted entirely by Motorola and not.
No, today that they're going to migrate from.
It would be stored within the database.
A database.
Yeah, it's all stored. Yeah,
but is a Motorola product today?
Yeah, WatchGuard. It stores the metadata into
Okay.
an SQL database, and then the videos also turn around and get put into the database. It's off storage onto a flat file, but they only keep it's either 90 or 120 days of it, unless they put basically an evidence hold on it. If it's evidence hold, they have to keep it until the DA tells them they don't need it anymore. But then after 90 days, then it automatically just deletes the data for it. So it does cycle down. And there's only like 17 terabytes in use. The prediction was within the first year and a half, they would be using 56 terabytes and we'd be adding disk shelves to the set. Their estimation was way, way, way off. So there's 56 terabytes minus 17 of disk space that's not even being used right now for it. So obviously we don't need to provision it. So 17 terabytes of data will be going up there along with the cloud.
Any concerns about bandwidth usage during the initial migration and ongoing?
Well, we're finally now on synchronous, and that was part of the pre-flight analysis of how much bandwidth you have. We have 10 gig that we could go up to, but our firewalls are only 1 gig. So it is 1 gig firewall upload, download speed going over to WISConnect for it. But it does burst the traffic. When they bring the body cameras in, it puts it onto a cradle, and then it waits for the bandwidth, and then it'll turn around and burst the traffic for it.
I think John was specifically talking about.
But the migration.
That's a lot of data.
Well, we
migration
also
by truck.
we also can put it on tape or
Right.
and then send it up as well.
Covered that when we discussed this project, right?
That was a bad joke because I'm like, we didn't discuss this project, did you? Weren't you here? Yeah, no.
And due to problems with the Office 365 tenant and Microsoft Intune not being available, all new laptop and desktop computers are being manually deployed without automation or package-based installations. This is extremely unfortunate, but IT has a well-documented build process for each facility. Office 2019 will continue to be deployed on all new computers, and the Office 365 suite is not available via cloud authentication at this time. Due to high pressure from the user community to deploy the new equipment, the Office suite will have to be updated to the latest version on all computers at a future date. Last but not least, what the heck is this thing? Oh. There was an initial problem with the Windows 11 version 24H2 on the new Lenovo M72 desktops. Anyone buy a new PC lately? When the OS was patched to the latest security patches and drivers, if the user made rapid mouse changes or scrolled over text within a highly populated .NET application, one or both monitors would go completely black for 1 to 2 seconds. This was encountered even when scrolling in Event Viewer. The problem first started appearing in December with a Microsoft update. A support call was placed with Lenovo and builds were temporarily placed on hold. The problem was fixed by using the AMD Adrenalin video drivers instead of those being deployed by Lenovo. The screen blanking problem was encountered on all new computers on factory builds without any updates. The computer shipped from the factory with this bug.
I heard
You know,
that.
we found too that we had audio issues with 24H2 where audio just stopped working.
Isn't it nice to have a Microsoft employee to hear
I
all
What,
that?
what year are we in? Come on.
I heard they broke the file manager too.
Details.
Nobody uses a file manager.
And that's why a lot of organizations wait, like especially upgrading on the H2 version and stuff like that. They wait like a 6 months. So just calling that out, that might be a best practice. You know?
Always good to lead with, this isn't necessarily the final product. You might want to wait.
Leading edge.
So Jim, one comment about what you just read about the CJIS work structure. Where's that going to be posted? Because people are going to need to know
Who
your
to go to.
your new roles and responsibilities. Certainly.
Well, one is going on my job description,
Yeah,
for
Well,
sure.
I think it means for public knowledge.
Public knowledge,
Yeah,
like at the police department.
Office knowledge.
well, within the police department, that they know within the posting of the police department who's the Laszlo and the officer for it. But CJIS really isn't used by anywhere else within the city government. I hold that role, but the only people that need to know it right now is the police department or any project that we have available that might have a CJIS component on it.
Yeah.
And since the director who's approving the projects, it's kind of nice being the CSO and CIO.
I don't know that the CSO really, I mean, nomenclature for that is Chief Security Officer.
Yeah,
I know.
Not CJIS.
I didn't
I know.
complain to the FBI. They reuse those
I was gonna say, does
acronyms.
that mean-
Well, but that might be something better for your resume.
Oh, I know.
Saying.
I'm the CSO and
CSO.
CIO.
Sure.
What are you writing here? I mean, these are,
Yeah.
this is not just CJIS, right?
Are you saying I'm not going to stay at Franklin
I
until
know.
my
No,
retirement?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Oh. Do you have anything else on this topic?
Nope, that's it.
Future agenda items. IT security project for Johnson Controls. What is that? I don't.
That is the security badge readers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it. Yeah. Okay. And our next meeting is March 26th. Spring date. Spring break here.
And we want comments back to Jim. In
March 5th.
March 5th.
March
Ish.
5th. Yeah. Otherwise, it'll just linger.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody want a motion for adjournment?
I'll motion to.
Thank you, Dale.
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we're adjourned.